Welcome to another This Week in Coworking discussion.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the This Week in Coworking podcast feed. I am your host, Hector Kolonas, and I am joined by my guest co-host for this week, Eyal Lasker from Flexspace. Eyal, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back, Hector. Always a pleasure.
I think the last time you were on the podcast was this week last year. Let's do this a yearly thing. We'll get Eyal back on the podcast,
Yeah.
dig into the news, explore what is happening at Flexspace, but also just have a laugh about, sometimes we take our industry a little bit too seriously. So in this week's newsletter, we shared around 30-ish links from across the co-working world. We are reviewing week 19. If you want to follow along, head to thisweekincoworking.com and click on week 19 of 2026. So today we're going to talk about a few different topics. We're going to obviously talk a little bit more about, the smart pricing agent that Flexspace has been evolving and improving over the last couple of years. We're going to talk about how one line turned a routine mail pickup into a moment of community magic and how far can we pull that string. We're going to talk about a brand new AI connector that brings around 50,000 businesses spending data into your AI engines. We're going to talk about Sarah Travers's post around utilization versus casting a very wide geographic net. And I think it's going to be a pretty meaty episode. So, Eyal, let's dive right in. Where do you want to start? Should we start with Flexspace up at the top, or should we dig into the newsletter first?
Let's do the newsletter.
Cool, let's do it. So, one of the first links that caught both your and my attention as we were running through the newsletter this week was that the community manager at Pearl Cowork shared a moment where a member who came in to pick up their mail, a virtual office client, while they were there, the community manager just gently introduced them to another member in the space. They landed up hanging out all day. They actually, I think, went out for lunch or something. They actually created a moment of community. And it was a good reminder to folks who are selling virtual offices or on-demand products that, hey, there is a way through gentle nudging to get them to be bigger parts of your community, but also to stick around a bit, maybe upgrade their membership, become full-time members. That doesn't have to be a purely automated, systemized process. You can nudge people who happen to have similar things in common or similar types of businesses to connect in this space. And people can only do that when they're free from kind of doing menial tasks on their computers. But the way I phrased it, I think, caught your attention in the fact you're like, what else could we call a moment of community magic, right? And what did you think about this link, Eyal?
Yeah, so first, I think that's it's actually a fantastic opportunity and fantastic way for us to think about VO and kind of rethink about it, and not only think about it as a revenue channel, but also as a moment to create, or an opportunity to create community. Love it. And it shows how valuable community managers are for the ecosystem, right? If a community manager can actually make that connection and be attentive to the people that are in the space and understand that there is an opportunity here to do some matchmaking, amazing, right? But I was, we talked before we hit record, and I said, okay, what else is like a community moment? And like, if it's like me going to do some grocery shopping, that's also, an opportunity for me to connect and meet people. But for the most part, love it. I mean, again, both of us are coming from the technology side, and if we can really free the time of the community team to do exactly that, then everyone's win.
Yeah, I think going back to the tech perspective, given that we are both very, very much, and not only the tech, but the data side of this industry, I think the data actually enables this to happen more and more often, right? If you know what industry your virtual mail customers are in, you know what industry the people who book meeting rooms are in, the people using your day passes, you know what your members are up to. All that data is circling around in and out of your space, in and out of your business, in and out of your network. If your community manager has that, the best community managers have that in their head, but that is not scalable. But if you could build a scalable system around that, what kinds of moments, what kinds of upsells and cross sells could you create through these serendipitous introductions? And that's something I've been exploring with a bunch of executives, especially when you look at very, very large spaces where the stickier the product, the tighter the community, the less churn, right? And that is one of the number one levers when you're building subscription businesses like we all are. how do you create that? But I also had a laugh with you about, how far is it? We happen to be wearing the same shoes. Is that a community moment? We happen, like, there is a point where it becomes a little bit too much, and your kind of community manager can make it feel a little bit false. So definitely find that fine line. And this is where it comes, down to hiring the right people, the people who have that emotional intelligence to know that, the accountant who's coming in on April 10th to pick up papers in a rush, don't introduce them to anyone. That is not the right time 3 days before tax day, 4 days before tax day to start introducing them to people, right? So having that emotional intelligence and being free to use that emotional intelligence because they're not busy running through to-do lists is critical for this to work.
Yeah, and that's the human aspect, right? We can create the data and systemize community and think about all the alerts and notifications and things that we can flag, but eventually, right, it's a human, like human connecting with humans, and you need to do it
Yes.
in, a human way.
Absolutely. But there is something that can be automated, right? And a big part of this is discovery. When I'm kind of looking for a space, when I'm looking to kind of join a space, when I am under pressure for different reasons to get a space, that can be systemized. Like how I interact with a space, how that space presents itself, but also how it presents its pricing to me, how it presents its availability to me can be systemized. I think that is where FlexSpace has been investing heavily lately, right? Is that where you kind of feel that, the smart pricing agent fits? It's not only about increasing the yields, but probably making it more adaptable to different types of use cases.
Yeah, it's optimizing access, right? And because at the end of the day, what do we want, right? We want more people to interact and with our spaces, right? And eventually, the end result of that is that if more people interact with your space, you grow your revenue, right? But the underlying thing is that you get to serve more people, right? And you get to serve more people from different types of, if it's like industries or occupations.
Mhm.
So with pricing, price is a sticky thing, right? I mean, in the sense that not everyone can afford the same price for the same product. So everyone has their different price points, and what is the true price? It's whatever people are willing to pay at a given moment. So
Yep.
if you can start adapting the prices for those moments, then you get more people converting to your product. I would say that also we shouldn't look at that as primarily like a transactional moment, right? Because if you're able to bring someone to your space once, now there's an opportunity to bring them again, right? And we should look at the entire lifetime value of those customers, right? So it might start with a meeting room booking that will then translate to a co-working membership or an office membership. So we need to look at the overall life cycle of that customer, and that's the approach that we're taking. So we build a system that can identify and find those price points that will convert the best. We started from meeting rooms. That was our kind of first stab into that. We proved that there is price elasticity in the market, which is very interesting, right? There is like a ratio of 1 to 3. You lower the price by 1%, you gain 3% more booking volume. It doesn't mean that if you drop the price to 0, you get infinite number of booking. It just means that for every hour of day and day of week, you have different price points for your products. That was the first product that we rolled out. We've seen success. Our partners have seen success with that. And then we took the same logic, right, and we adapted it to the Office product. So different. So we started, most of the listeners knows us from the e-commerce side. So on-demand products that you're selling through your website. So that's the ancillary bucket of your revenue. And then from there, we took it to the next level, which is your private office memberships. Different, right? That's not something that you sell online. That's something that you're selling through the community managers and the salespeople on the ground. However, with our pricing agent, now those salespeople are getting fresh lists of prices every week, and they can better find the right quote for the right office. So moving from the e-commerce to yield management.
It's very, very interesting because you mentioned it's not going to be e-commerce. So tell me a little bit about like how is it delivered to the sales team? Is it just an email that they get that's generated by the agent? Is it a dashboard? Like what is that interface? Because I work with many, many sales teams and there are hundreds of Excel sheets. What are you giving them that is 10x better than what they're using today?
We want to find the salespeople where they're at, right? And because this is different than e-commerce, we can surface the price in the existing sales tools that they are using today. So we are not confining the salespeople to a dashboard or a specific way of working. We want to, for them to use this tool in the most seamless way that is possible. For some people, it's HubSpot. Other people, it's their property management system. If it's R&D or Yardi or Nexus or so. We've seen different salespeople having different workflows. We adapt to the workflow that they use. Some of them, by the way, it is Excel sheet.
Yep. Excel is the glue that holds our industry together, man. Like as much as it pains me, that's great that you kind of expanded that out and you've obviously expanded the value of the product. I'm a huge fan, but there is something coming next, right? I know that AI is a big part of your product line, and you're gonna probably dig more deeply into that. Can we expect any new releases from you guys in the next couple of months?
Yeah, so all of our pricing mechanism is done by AI, right? At the end of the day, you have like it's not us crunching the numbers in the back end, right? We just connect to different data sources and making sure they are clean, and then it's the AI in the back end that is doing all the work. What's amazing about that is not only it's like how do you are able to analyze large sets of data and connect different data sources. It's also the learning mechanism, right, of the model, the ability to look back and to adjust. And so even if like two locations are starting from at the same starting point, you can really see how they diverge, because what we've learned throughout our journey, and specifically with pricing, is that really every location, it's like its own micro market. So we're doing QBRs, quarterly business reviews, with our partners, and one of the things it's always amazing to see. So if you take like same operator, same brand, same city, an operator with 10 14 locations in one city, you'll see completely different pricing behaviors. Some of them, the market can absorb price increase, and the market is less elastic or more inelastic to the price. Others are widely, very much elastic. You reduce the price, you see spike in booking volumes. You also see those changing trends between. We all know that Mondays and Fridays, the shoulder days, right, are quieter, right? But now with pricing, you actually have opportunities to shift behaviors. So we talked about how you serve a larger portion of larger sets of users, right? So if booking a meeting room at a Wednesday, peak time is too expensive for a freelancer or a startup, they can shift and go book that on Mondays. But the other thing that we've seen that is interesting is that not all Mondays and Fridays are created equals, and you do get those days that although they are shoulder days, you see a spike in behavior, and
Mhm.
that can be because local market events and different behaviors. So I will say like pricing shouldn't be like a static thing that you configure or that you set and forget. It's a living, breathing organism that always adjusts to find the best price point for each of your users.
That is really fascinating because it is also about the data you get in, right? The better data in, the better geographic data, the better business data, etc., is going to affect that pricing and allow you to adapt pretty quickly.
Yeah, so we will talk about network effects later as it comes
Mhm.
to Sarah's post, but this is just something that I'm very obsessive about, and one of the things that I truly love is you can find those flywheels and those network effects that just the more data that you are able to process, then the more value you get, and the more value you get, essentially drives more customers and more users. That's what we're seeing with the product, and it's truly kind of amazing to see that.
Yeah. And I'm gonna go. We're definitely gonna dig into Sarah Travers's post because she always does share either contrarian or unique viewpoints that can always be debated. And we probably debated Sarah's posts more than anyone's on this podcast. But before we get to that, it all comes down to the data you ingest, right? And the vast amounts of it. There was a new data drop that was presented to the world this week, and that was Ramp opening up their spending data, their business spending data through Anthropic's AI engines. And it's a really interesting one. If you don't know what Ramp is, they're a business spending card. You can run your expenses through it, but they also put out data as to what businesses are spending money on. And so through this MCP or API integration with Claude, you can now start querying what are 50,000 different businesses spending their money on, categorized basically on the credit card spending categories. I was fascinated with this. I did not have the chance today to connect it to my Claude. Did you have a chance at all to connect it to yours, Eyal?
Not yet, but I can only imagine what we can do with that.
My mind went straight away to, what can we learn about the office spend and the coffee spend of small businesses? Like how many people are spending money on cappuccinos 3 times a day? And how many people are spending on co-working memberships? And is there a correlation between that in any way? Which for a human to do, even at only 50,000 businesses, would take forever. But Claude? Not so much. So I think that's really fascinating, as well as tech spend, categorization of different types of business, how they spend. What was the first thing you're going to ask?
Good question, but wait, let me think about it. So I would love to see the trend of how companies grow their expenses on AI tools.
That's a good one.
I would love to see if this is real or just a facade.
Didn't you know everyone is spending billions of dollars on AI, and also they're spending hundreds of dollars a month to replace the $59 tool. This is what I know so far about their spend, but I'd love to also see from the credit cards, is this actually true? Also, how much are development firms or dev teams spending on tokens? I'd love to see that as well. Like it's all well and great to say, you don't have to hire junior developers, but if you're spending 3 times what you would pay them on tokens, that's an interesting trend line.
It's a real problem. I'm hitting the limit faster and faster, and
It is.
yeah, it's becoming a thing, right? So that you need to
Yep.
manage it, you need to forecast, and you need to think about it.
Yeah, so we'll definitely dig into that. We'll probably have just another like geek out once we both connected it and kind of look at, what did you ask? What did you find out? And I'm sure over the next couple of weeks, our LinkedIn feeds are going to be absolutely full of this is what I asked, this is what I got, just like when we've had other new data tools. So I'm excited to see that. So let's dive into Sarah's post this week. Sarah Travers, CEO over at WorkBar, made the case that every time she goes to a conference, she feels like she's always been asked the same question, and it's how many locations do you have? So much so that after Juicy, she got off stage and she wrote this post where she was like, "You're asking me the wrong question. You're asking me how many locations do I have, where instead you should ask me what is the utilization of my spaces." And I thought this is a really interesting reframe away from there's only going to be 100 to 200 large operators. The rest are not going to be that large. And by framing it around kind of taking it back to tech perspective, utilization is, the product market fit. Like if you do not have people using 10 spaces, 100 spaces, then it doesn't matter how many spaces you have. You could have 100 servers running your code. If no one is using it, it doesn't matter. I think that's the impression I got from Sarah's post. And that's the way I viewed it through that text lens. That it's great. You can build the greatest, prettiest, most amazing AI system in the world. If no one's using it, it doesn't matter. And so I guess that's the point that she's trying to make. Is that the same viewpoint that you got, or did you take it another way?
At the end of the day, as you said, right, if you run 50 locations or whatever the number is, but they're all empty, then one, you won't run them for long, right?
Yeah.
And second, right, it doesn't really create value. But in building on what you said, right, but once you are able to build those highly functioning, highly utilized locations, so that's one problem set. The second problem set is how do you create a network of locations that actually feed off each other?
Hmm.
And kind of grow or grow the value of each added location that you add to the network. And it sounds like she figured it out and she really kept her brand and the operation regional, so that whenever she adds one new location, not only she added one added functional location to the network, but now all the other locations actually grew their value too,
Yes.
right? So the more locations, the more users, but they also feed off one another, and therefore, you just getting into this cycle that you the value exponentially.
Absolutely, and I think you're definitely hitting on the point about like what makes work bar work is the fact that it is the reciprocity of using different locations is baked in, is actually part of their business model, of part of their offering, that you're going to probably use more than one location. Whereas I know that Industrious has a all access pass, WeWork has something similar. Regis had a gold card previously where you could pop into any of the locations, but it always felt very clunky to use. So it's not a new concept to build a network of space where people can drop into multiple locations, but actually measuring that and seeing higher utilization of that is pretty rare. Um, I mean, you'll have better data around kind of how many people use multiple locations from the same brand. But from at least from what I've seen, she's reported that 20% of her members are using multiple locations frequently, and that's up 25% from this time last year. That is a pretty good step up in the fact that you are building an ecosystem of workspaces as opposed to having other locations be a perk of membership. So it's just a really interesting way to kind of think about that. Are you seeing any data like that about people using multiple locations?
Yeah, so I can even go back to the days of building work on demand back in before pandemic. So we analyzed that, right? So we launched the work on demand, all access, all of these types of products. But eventually, what we've seen is that most people are using a small subset of locations that are in the same geographical area. Because
Hmm.
think about us humans, right? How many times do we venture out of the city, or like the region in which we are living in? And
Yep.
usually you will want to be in an area, in a confined area that is close to where you live or close to your office space. So again, I think she really nailed it right. When operators think about expansion, yes, you can expand to other cities and other areas, right, where you might find great opportunities, but then you are growing linearly, right? Because every location is just like its own added siloed of revenue.
Correct.
Where you can build like value within a region, then again,
Yeah.
it's much more than just adding yet another location.
Yep. And it also goes back to what you were saying before, right? It's launching in a different city is a very, very different market, but also launching on different streets within the same city is a whole different equation and pricing elasticity and all of that. So it is very, very interesting to think about when do you expand? Everyone is trying to get to, that glorified number of 95% utilization and all the members are in all the time. But, even to go back to this post, Sarah was saying, those members who are jumping between locations, they only come in 3 days a week. And they're not basing themselves there full time in the traditional co-working sense. They are actually coming in for specific work sessions. And that is okay. It's actually good as part of what makes our model work, which is pretty, pretty interesting. But then it also opens up the question, do you wait to get pulled into a new market or do you push yourself into a new market? And I think that is the main two strategies we're seeing when operators are like, I have this golden opportunity to enter a new market, or my members are demanding that they want me to be in a specific sub-market, in a specific street, specific area. And how do you assess that? So I think this kind of conversation just is another way to think about that question.
Yeah, when you expand in a single market, you also strengthen your brand, right? But when you are branching out to a new market, now you need to build your brand from scratch, right? Which
Yeah.
is, again, hard to do. So, there are many dynamics to, or I would say, like most of the operators will be inclined to stay in the region, because also think then about operations and that they can share the staff between the different locations. Again, when you go to another site, another area, then you need to hire everyone from the ground up. So I would say for network effects, for efficiency and cost efficiency, right? Building density in one single area is the thing to do.
And it's definitely a strategy we're seeing play out. We'll keep reporting on it. Eyal, thank you very much for joining me again this week. Where are you going to be next? Where can people meet you and find you?
Yeah, so we're in New York. Whenever we are in New York and always available and happy, and we are joining the coffees, the Hector's coffees, as much as possible. But we'll be next in Toronto, GWA, coming up beginning of June.
So we'll probably see you there. And if not, the next co-working coffee is on the 15th of May. If you are in and around New York, head to the website, click on the coffees. It'll be here in Jersey City this time, just to make it fun, because we got dragged to Brooklyn last month. So we'll see you here. If you are listening in this far and you're thinking of what to do next, go over and play This Week in Co-working's word search game. We've added streaks, we've added personal bests. It's getting very competitive with co-working leaders across the world, trying to find Eyal's 10 words before each other. That's twic.co/play. Otherwise, we'll be back in your podcast feed a little bit later this week. Until then, take care, be kind to each other, and be awesome. Bye.